A poor single black mother with twins baby enters a jeweler's store to sell her necklace in order to buy milk for her sick babies. A billionaire CEO was in the same store to buy a Rolex. He immediately recognizes the necklace and unexpectedly surprises her beyond imagination. She clutched the necklace so tightly, the gold edges cut into her palm, her baby's fevered cries echoing in her memory as she whispered to the jeweler, "Please, it's all I have left." Behind her, a man in a $1,000 suit froze, his coffee cup slipping from his fingers as he stared at the emerald pendant. The same one his sister had worn the night she disappeared 23 years ago. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I'm bringing you another story just as interesting and unforgettable as this one. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, let's continue. The November rain hammered against the windows of the cramped studio apartment on Cass Avenue. Each drop like a reminder that winter was coming and Keisha Williams had nowhere left to turn. She sat on the edge of her second-hand mattress, watching her 8-month-old twins, Zara and Malik, sleep fitfully in their shared crib. Their small bodies were too warm, their breathing too shallow, and the empty formula cans in the kitchenette mocked her with their silence. "Mama's gonna fix this," she whispered, her voice cracking as she brushed Zara's damp curls away from her fevered forehead. The pediatrician at the free clinic had been clear. The twins needed their medication, proper nutrition, and follow-up care. All things that cost money she didn't have. Keisha's fingers found the chain around her neck, the only thing of value she owned. The emerald pendant had belonged to her grandmother, then her mother, passed down through 3 generations of Williams women. It caught the grey morning light streaming through her window, casting tiny green reflections on the peeling wallpaper. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "This necklace survived slavery, segregation, and every hardship our family faced. It's our strength, baby girl." But strength wouldn't buy formula. 23 miles away in the gleaming heart of downtown Detroit, Vincent Alexander stepped out of his black Bentley onto the polished sidewalk of Renaissance Center. The November wind whipped his charcoal wool coat as he strode toward Cartwright and Associates' fine jewelry, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the wet pavement. At 35, he had built Alexander Industries from a small tech startup into a billion-dollar empire, but success had come at a price. Every relationship had crumbled under the weight of his ambition. His assistant, Patricia, hurried to match his pace, her heels tapping rapidly. "Your meeting with the Shanghai investors is at 2, Mr. Alexander. The Rolex selection should take no more than 15 minutes. Vincent nodded absently, his mind already calculating quarterly projections. He needed the watch for tonight's charity gala, another performance where he'd write checks to ease his conscience while maintaining the proper distance from actual human suffering. The jewelry store's warmth enveloped him as he entered, the scent of leather and expensive cologne mixing with the subtle hum of classical music. "Mr. Alexander." Gerald Cartwright emerged from behind the mahogany counter, his smile practiced and wide. "I have the perfect selection waiting. The Submariner, the Daytona, and a limited edition piece that just arrived from Switzerland." As Gerald laid out the gleaming timepieces, Vincent's attention wandered to the store's other customers. A young woman in a faded purple winter coat stood at the far counter, her back rigid with tension. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun despite the obvious wear in her clothes, and she clutched a small velvet pouch like it contained her entire world. "Please," her voice carried across the store, barely above a whisper. "I know it's not much to look at, but it's real gold. The emerald is genuine too. My grandmother had it appraised years ago." Vincent's hand froze over the Rolex display. Something in her tone, desperation wrapped in dignity, made him look up. The woman's shoulders shook slightly as she opened the pouch, revealing a necklace that caught the store's bright lights. "I just need enough for..." Her voice broke. "For my babies. They're sick and I can't." The emerald pendant swayed as she lifted it, and Vincent's world tilted on its axis. The breath left his lungs in a rush. The intricate gold filigree, the way the emerald caught the light, the small chip on the left side of the stone. He knew that necklace. He had memorized every detail 23 years ago, the night his sister Aaliyah had worn it to her high school graduation party. The night she had vanished without a trace. What do you think connected Vincent to this necklace? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to see how this emotional story unfolds. Gerald's voice seemed to come from underwater as he examined the piece. Well, it's certainly vintage. The craftsmanship is adequate. I could offer you $200. 200. The woman's voice cracked. But it's been in my family for generations. It has to be worth more than. I'm sorry, miss, but sentimental value doesn't translate to market value. Take it or leave it. Vincent watched the woman's face crumble, watched her fingers trace the emerald one last time. In that moment, he saw something he recognized. The same fierce love that had driven his sister to work double shifts to help pay for his college tuition. The same determination that had made her promise to always be there for him. The coffee cup slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor in an explosion of ceramic and sound that made everyone in the store turn to look. But Vincent only had eyes for the necklace, for the impossible connection between his past and this moment. Wait, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. Don't sell it. Not yet. The shattered coffee cup lay in porcelain fragments across the marble floor, each piece reflecting the store's crystalline lights like fallen stars. Keisha turned at the sound, her eyes meeting those of the tall man in the expensive suit who had spoken. His face had gone ashen, his dark eyes fixed on her necklace with an intensity that made her instinctively step back. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely steady. Her fingers tightened around the emerald pendant, pulling it closer to her chest. "I'm sorry, but this is between me and... Where did you get that necklace?" Vincent's words cut through the air like glass, sharp and desperate. He moved toward her, his usual composed demeanor completely shattered. Gerald Cartwright looked between them, confusion creasing his weathered features. "Sir, I don't think it's appropriate to," Gerald began, but Vincent's raised hand silenced him. Keisha's heart hammered against her ribs. The man's stare felt like it was burning through her, seeing something she couldn't understand. "It's been in my family," she said, taking another step back until her hip hit the jewelry counter. "My grandmother left it to my mother, and my mother left it to me. Why? What's it to you?" Vincent's hands trembled as he reached into his wallet, pulling out a worn photograph. The edges were soft with age, the colors slightly faded, but the image was clear. A young black woman with Vincent's same dark eyes, wearing the exact necklace that now hung around Keisha's neck. She was laughing in the photo, her head thrown back in joy, the emerald catching the flash of the camera. "Because," Vincent's voice cracked, "this necklace belonged to my sister." The world seemed to tilt. Keisha stared at the photograph, then at Vincent, then back at the photo. The woman in the picture couldn't have been more than 18, her face glowing with youth and possibility. But there was something familiar about her features, something that made Keisha's breath catch in her throat. "That's impossible," she whispered. "This necklace has been in the Williams family for 3 generations. My grandmother told me stories about how her grandmother wore it when she was freed from slavery. It's our history hour." "Her name was Aaliyah," Vincent continued, his voice hollow. "Aaliyah Alexander. She was 17 when this picture was taken, 18 when she disappeared. She was wearing this necklace the night she vanished." The silence in the store was deafening. Gerald had stopped pretending to work, his mouth slightly open as he watched the scene unfold. Patricia stood frozen by the entrance, her phone forgotten in her hand. Keisha's mind raced. Williams had been her mother's maiden name, the name she'd kept even after her brief marriage to Keisha's father. But her mother had been secretive about her past, always changing the subject when Keisha asked about her family's history. "My mother never mentioned any Alexanders," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Vincent stepped closer, his eyes never leaving the necklace. "What was your mother's name?" "Denise. Denise Williams." The words felt strange on her tongue, like speaking a foreign language. "When was she born?" 1986. "But I don't understand what this has to do with." Vincent's knees nearly gave out. The math was impossible to ignore. If Aaliyah had been 18 when she disappeared in 2001, and if she'd somehow survived, if she'd had a baby. "Tell me," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "did your mother ever mention Detroit? Did she ever talk about having a brother?" Keisha's hand flew to her throat. The memories came flooding back. Fragments of conversations she'd dismissed as childhood confusion. Her mother's tears whenever they passed the city limits sign entering Detroit. The way she'd flinch when strangers called her by her first name. The photograph hidden in her jewelry box of a young man in a graduation cap that she'd claimed was just a friend. She used to have nightmares," Keisha said slowly. "She'd wake up screaming about leaving someone behind. I thought she was talking about my father leaving us." Vincent pulled out his phone with shaking hands, scrolling through his photos until he found what he was looking for. A family portrait from Christmas 2000, just months before Aaliyah disappeared. He was 17, awkward and grinning, his arm around a beautiful young woman who looked exactly like an older version of Keisha. "This is us," he said, holding out the phone. "Christmas morning, 2000. She made me promise to always look out for her, and I failed. I failed her completely." Keisha took the phone, her vision blurring as she stared at the image. The woman in the photo had her nose, her chin, her exact smile. But more than that, she had the same way of tilting her head when she was thinking, the same habit of tucking her hair behind her left ear. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Oh my God, that's my mother." The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Vincent caught her as her knees buckled, his arms wrapping around her as 23 years of questions suddenly had answers. She was his niece. The babies waiting at home with fever and need were his blood, his family, the family he'd been searching for his entire adult life. "She's gone," Keisha sobbed against his chest. "She died 2 years ago. Cancer. She made me promise to keep the necklace, to pass it down to my children. She said it was all we had left of our family." Vincent held her tighter, his own tears falling freely now. "She was wrong," he whispered into her hair. "She was so wrong. You're not alone. You've never been alone." Gerald cleared his throat softly from behind the counter. "Perhaps," he said gently, "we should close the store for a few minutes. This seems like a conversation that needs privacy." Vincent nodded, not trusting his voice. Through the store's windows, Detroit continued its daily rhythm. Cars honking, people hurrying past with their heads down against the November wind. But inside Cartwright and Associates, time had stopped. Two lost souls had found each other in the most impossible way, connected by a piece of jewelry that had carried their family's love across decades of separation. "The babies," Keisha said suddenly, pulling back to look at him. "My twins, Zora and Malik. They're sick, and I can't afford their medication. That's why I came here. That's why I was going to sell." "We're going to take care of them," Vincent said firmly. "We're going to take care of everything. Your family, Keisha. You're my family." But even as he spoke the words, he saw the doubt creeping into her eyes. The reality of their situation was crashing down around them. He was a billionaire. She was struggling to survive. The necklace had brought them together, but the world they lived in was designed to keep them apart. "I don't need your charity," she said, stepping back from his embrace. "I can take care of my own children." "It's not charity," Vincent said desperately. "It's family. There's a difference." But Keisha was already moving toward the door, clutching the necklace tight against her chest. "I have to go. This is too much. I can't." "Please," Vincent called after her. Please don't run. Not like she did. Keisha stopped at the door, her hand on the handle. For a moment, Vincent thought she might stay, might give them a chance to figure this out together. But then she shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." And then she was gone, disappearing into the grey Detroit morning like his sister had 23 years before, leaving Vincent standing alone among the shattered pieces of his coffee cup, wondering if he'd just lost his family all over again. The 23 bus lurched through downtown Detroit traffic, its worn brakes squealing at every red light. Keisha pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the city blur past through her tears. Her reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, desperate, clutching the emerald necklace like a lifeline. The other passengers avoided her gaze, lost in their own struggles, their own survival. This can't be real, she thought, replaying the scene at the jewelry store over and over. Men like him don't just appear out of nowhere claiming to be family. Men like him have agendas. Her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. "Babies are asking for mama. Zora's fever is getting worse. How did it go at the store?" Keisha's stomach clenched. She'd been gone for 3 hours, and she was returning home with nothing. No money, no answers, just more questions that felt too dangerous to explore. She typed back, "Coming home now. Thank you for watching them." The bus shuddered to a stop at Cass Avenue, and Keisha stepped into the biting November wind. Her apartment building loomed ahead, its red brick facade stained with decades of neglect. Children's voices echoed from the playground behind the building, a sound that usually brought her comfort, but now felt like mockery. Other kids were playing while hers were suffering. As she climbed the 3 flights of stairs, each step felt heavier than the last. She paused outside her door, listening to the muffled sounds of her babies crying inside. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was soft but worried, trying to soothe them with Spanish lullabies that reminded Keisha of her own mother's gentle singing. "Keisha?" Mrs. Rodriguez opened the door before she could knock. The 60-year-old woman's face was creased with concern. "Mija, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "More like I've seen my past," Keisha thought, but she forced a smile. "It's nothing, Mrs. Rodriguez. Just, the store didn't offer as much as I hoped. But you still have the necklace." Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes dropped to the emerald pendant. "You didn't sell it?" Keisha's hand flew to her throat. She'd forgotten she was still wearing it. I changed my mind. I couldn't do it." Mrs. Rodriguez studied her face carefully. "Sometimes the universe has other plans, Mija. Maybe there's another way." "The universe doesn't pay rent," Keisha wanted to say, but she kept the bitterness to herself. "How are they?" "Zora's fever broke about an hour ago, but she's still not eating. Malik has been fussy all morning. They need their mama." Keisha entered her apartment, the familiar scent of baby formula and cleaning products wrapping around her like a worn blanket. Zora and Malik lay in their crib, their small faces flushed with fever. The sight of them made her chest tighten with love and desperation. "Mama's here," she whispered, lifting Zora into her arms. The baby's skin was too warm, her breathing shallow. "Mama's here, baby girl." As Mrs. Rodriguez left with promises to check on them later, Keisha sank into her second-hand rocking chair, holding both babies close. The necklace pressed against her chest, a reminder of the impossible encounter that had shattered her morning. What if he was telling the truth? The thought crept in despite her resistance. What if my mother really was his sister? But accepting that truth meant accepting that her mother had lived with secrets, that the woman who'd raised her had been running from something, or someone. It meant that the family stories she'd grown up with were lies, that the necklace's history was more complicated than she'd ever imagined. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Please don't shut me out. I know this is overwhelming, but we need to talk. Your babies need medical care. Let me help. Vincent." Keisha stared at the message, her finger hovering over the delete button. The fact that he'd somehow gotten her number felt invasive, another reminder of the power imbalance between them. Men like Vincent Alexander didn't just help. They controlled, they manipulated, they demanded gratitude in return. She deleted the message without responding. Meanwhile, across the city, Vincent sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor of the Renaissance Center, staring out at the Detroit River. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his mahogany desk, but he barely noticed. His assistant had cancelled all his meetings, his phone had been buzzing with missed calls from investors, and his billion-dollar empire was running itself while he tried to process what had happened. "Mr. Alexander?" Patricia knocked softly on his door. "The Shanghai investors are still waiting for your call. Should I reschedule?" "Cancel it," Vincent said without turning around. "Cancel everything." "Sir, this deal is worth." "I said cancel it." His voice was sharper than intended, and Patricia stepped back slightly. "I'm sorry, Patricia. I need some time." When she left, Vincent pulled out his phone and called the one person who might understand. His mentor, Dr. Harold Weber, had been like a father to him after his parents died in a car accident when he was 19. Harold had helped him search for Aaliyah in those early years, had held him when the leads went cold, had encouraged him to build his life even when part of him was still lost. "Vincent." Harold's voice was warm but surprised. "It's been months since you called. How are you holding up?" "Harold, I found her. I found Aaliyah." The silence stretched so long Vincent wondered if the call had dropped. "Vincent," Harold said carefully, "we've been through this before. You can't keep chasing every lead that. She's dead." The words came out harsher than he intended. "She died 2 years ago." "But Harold, she had a daughter." "I have a niece. I have a family." Harold's intake of breath was audible. "Are you certain?" "Vincent, you've been down this road before. Remember the woman in Chicago who claimed to be?" "I'm certain." Vincent's voice was steady now, grounded in truth. "She had the necklace, Harold. Aaliyah's necklace. The one she was wearing the night she disappeared. And she looks exactly like her. The same eyes, the same smile. It's her daughter. Where is she now?" "She ran." Vincent's voice broke slightly. "Just like Aaliyah did. She took one look at me and ran. Can you blame her?" Harold's voice was gentle. "Think about it from her perspective, Vincent. A strange man approaches her, claims to be her uncle, shows her old photographs. If she's been struggling, if she's desperate, she might think it's some kind of scam." Vincent hadn't considered that. In his mind, the truth had been so obvious, so overwhelming, that he'd assumed she'd feel the same recognition he had. But Harold was right. From her perspective, he was just another rich man with an agenda. "She has twins," Vincent said quietly. "Babies. They're sick, and she was trying to sell the necklace to pay for their medication." "Oh, Vincent." Harold's voice was heavy with understanding. "That's why you need to be careful. She's vulnerable, and you're Vincent Alexander. The power dynamic alone could make her suspicious of your motives." "But they're my family," Vincent said desperately. "They're all I have left of her." "Then you need to prove that you're not trying to buy your way into their lives. You need to show her that you care about them as people, not as a connection to your sister." Vincent ended the call feeling more lost than before. He understood Harold's caution, but every instinct in his body screamed at him to act, to fix this, to make sure his newfound family was safe. He'd failed to protect Aaliyah, but he wouldn't fail her daughter. His phone rang. His private investigator, Marcus Chun, whom he'd kept on retainer for years in case any new leads about Aaliyah surfaced. "Vincent, I got your message. You said you found her. Her daughter. I need you to find out everything you can about Keisha Williams." "But Marcus," Vincent's voice turned cold, "I want you to be discreet. If she finds out I'm having her investigated, I'll lose her forever." "Of course. What do you want to know?" "Everything. Her address, her financial situation, her children's medical needs. I want to help her, but I need to know how to do it without scaring her away." As Marcus agreed to get started immediately, Vincent felt a familiar tension in his chest. This was what he did. He gathered information, he strategized, he controlled situations until they bent to his will. But this time felt different. This time, he wasn't trying to win a business deal or acquire a company. He was trying to save the only family he had left. The afternoon sun was fading over Detroit, casting the city in shades of gold and shadow. Somewhere out there, in a small apartment he'd never seen, his niece was holding her sick children and wondering if she'd made a mistake by walking away from him. Vincent pressed his face against the cool window glass, watching the city sprawl out below him. For the first time in 23 years, he had a real lead on his sister's fate. But more than that, he had a chance to honor her memory by taking care of the family she'd left behind. The question was, how could he help them without destroying the fragile possibility of connection they'd discovered? His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Found her address. 1247, Cass Avenue, apartment 3B. Vincent, she's in trouble. Real trouble. Vincent's blood ran cold. He was already reaching for his coat. The November evening had settled over Detroit like a heavy blanket, streetlights flickering to life as Vincent's Bentley pulled up to the weather department building on Cass Avenue. The contrast between his gleaming car and the cracked sidewalk felt like a chasm he wasn't sure he could cross. Marcus Chen's report had been brief but devastating. Keisha was 3 months behind on rent. Her utilities were scheduled for disconnection tomorrow, and the twins' medical bills were mounting into the thousands. Vincent sat in the driver's seat, staring up at the third-floor windows. One showed a dim light, apartment 3B. His niece was up there, probably holding her babies, probably wondering how she was going to make it through another night. The weight of responsibility pressed down on his chest like a physical thing. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Emergency board meeting moved to 8 a.m. tomorrow. The Shanghai deal is falling apart without your input. Vincent deleted the message without responding. For once in his life, billion-dollar deals seemed insignificant compared to the sick children 3 floors above him. He stepped out of the car, the November wind cutting through his wool coat. The building's front door hung slightly askew on its hinges, and the security intercom system looked like it hadn't worked in years. As he climbed the narrow stairs, the scent of cooking food and cleaning supplies mixed with something else. The underlying smell of poverty that no amount of dignity could completely mask. Apartment 3B's door was painted a faded green, with the number 3 hanging at an odd angle. Vincent raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. What if she called the police? What if she thought he was stalking her? What if? A baby's cry pierced the silence, high and desperate. Then another voice joined it, both twins wailing in harmony. Vincent's heart clenched as he heard Keisha's voice through the thin walls, exhausted and breaking. Sure, babies, please. Mama's trying. I promise I'm trying. He knocked gently. The crying stopped abruptly, replaced by an ominous silence. Keisha, he called softly. It's Vincent. Vincent Alexander. Please, I just want to talk. Go away. Her voice was muffled but firm. I told you, I don't need your help. I know you don't need it, Vincent said, pressing his palm against the door. But I need to give it. Please. 5 minutes. The silence stretched so long he wondered if she'd simply decided to ignore him. Then he heard the chain lock sliding, the deadbolt turning. The door opened just a crack, revealing one brown eye and a slice of her face. How did you get my address? She asked, suspicion heavy in her voice. Vincent's stomach dropped. He couldn't tell her about the private investigator, couldn't explain that he'd used his resources to invade her privacy. I asked around. Look, I know this seems. You asked around. Her voice was flat, dangerous. You mean you had me investigated? The accusation hung between them like a blade. Vincent opened his mouth to deny it, then closed it. She was too smart for lies, and she'd already been hurt by too many people who'd underestimated her intelligence. "Yes," he said quietly. "I had you investigated. And I know that was wrong, but Keisha, you have to understand." "I don't have to understand anything." The door started to close. "Wait." Vincent pressed his hand against the door frame. "Please. I know you're 3 months behind on rent. I know your utilities are being shut off tomorrow. I know the twins need medication you can't afford. I know you're scared, and I know you don't trust me, but those babies are crying, and I can't just walk away." The door stopped closing. Through the crack, he could see her face more clearly now, exhausted, defiant, but also desperate. Behind her, the twins' cries had started again, weaker now but persistent. "What do you want from me?" she asked, and the defeat in her voice nearly broke him. "I want to help my family," Vincent said simply. "I want to do what I couldn't do for your mother." Keisha studied his face for a long moment, then stepped back and opened the door wider. "5 minutes," she said. "Then you leave." Vincent stepped into the small apartment, and the reality of her situation hit him like a physical blow. The studio was clean but sparse, with mismatched furniture and walls that needed painting. The twins lay in a crib that had seen better days, their small faces flushed with fever. A stack of unpaid bills sat on the kitchen counter next to an empty formula container. But despite the poverty, despite the obvious struggle, there was love in every corner of the space. Hand-drawn pictures were taped to the refrigerator, a mobile made from colorful paper cranes hung over the crib, and soft jazz music played from an old radio. Keisha had created a home with nothing but determination and heart. "They're beautiful," Vincent said, moving toward the crib. Zora and Malik looked up at him with eyes that were unmistakably Alexander eyes. The same dark brown that had belonged to his sister, the same long lashes that had made Aaliyah the envy of every girl in their high school. "Don't," Keisha said sharply, stepping between him and the babies. "Don't you dare look at them like they're some kind of prize you can claim." Vincent stepped back, hands raised. "I'm not trying to claim anything. I'm trying to help." "Help how? By throwing money at us? By making us your charity case?" Keisha's voice was rising, and the babies began to cry again. "I've been taking care of them just fine without you. Have you?" The words came out harsher than Vincent intended. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're drowning." The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Keisha's face crumpled, and she sank into the rocking chair, pulling both babies into her arms. Her shoulders shook with silent tears. "I'm sorry," Vincent said quickly. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." Keisha's voice was barely a whisper. "And you're right. I am drowning. Every day I wake up and wonder if this is the day I finally go under. But they're my babies, and I'll figure it out. I always figure it out." Vincent knelt beside the chair, careful not to get too close. "You shouldn't have to figure it out alone. Family doesn't work that way." "We're not family," Keisha said, but her voice lacked conviction. "We're strangers who happen to share DNA." "Are we?" Vincent pulled out his phone, scrolling to a video he'd cherished for years. "Look at this." The video showed Aaliyah at 17, dancing in their childhood living room to an old R&B song. She was laughing, spinning in circles, her movements full of joy and life. Vincent's younger voice could be heard behind the camera, teasing her about her terrible moves. "She did the same thing you just did," Vincent said softly. "When she was upset, when she was overwhelmed, she'd pull me into her arms and rock me until we both felt better. She'd hum jazz songs just like the ones playing on your radio." Keisha watched the video, her eyes widening. "She looks so happy." She was. She was the happiest person I knew, right up until the night she disappeared. Vincent's voice caught. "I've spent 23 years wondering what happened to her, wondering if I could have saved her. And now I have a chance to save the people she loved most." "You can't save us," Keisha said, but she was still watching the video. "You can't just swoop in and fix everything with your money and your connections." "Maybe not," Vincent admitted. But I can try. And more than that, I can be here. I can be the uncle those babies deserve. I can be the brother your mother needed. A knock at the door interrupted them. Keisha, Mija? Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was concerned. I heard raised voices. Is everything okay? Keisha looked at Vincent, then at the door. It's my neighbor. She looks out for us. Let her in, Vincent said. I don't want you to feel like you have to hide anything. Keisha opened the door, and Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes immediately went to Vincent, taking in his expensive suit and the obvious tension in the room. Who is this? She asked, her protective instincts clearly activated. This is. Keisha hesitated. This is Vincent Alexander. He says he's my uncle. Mrs. Rodriguez's eyebrows rose. Your uncle? The one your mother used to have nightmares about. Vincent's head snapped up. She had nightmares about me? Not about you, Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. About leaving you. She used to cry in her sleep, saying she was sorry for leaving her little brother. Keisha, I told you your mother was running from something painful, not something dangerous. The pieces clicked into place. Aaliyah hadn't been running from Vincent. She'd been running from the pain of their parents' death, from the responsibility of raising a teenage brother when she was barely an adult herself. She'd been 17 when their parents died, 18 when she disappeared. She'd been a child trying to raise another child. She was scared, Vincent said, understanding flooding through him. She was scared she couldn't take care of me. She was pregnant, Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly. She told me once that she got pregnant young and scared, and she ran because she thought she was failing everyone she loved. Vincent's legs gave out, and he sank into the second-hand couch. I spent 23 years thinking she ran away from me. I thought I'd failed her. You both failed each other, Mrs. Rodriguez said with the gentle wisdom of someone who'd lived through enough heartbreak to understand forgiveness. But babies don't care about the past. They care about the present. As if on cue, Malik began to cry again, his small body shaking with fever. Keisha tried to soothe him, but he wouldn't settle. He needs his medicine, she said desperately. His fever's getting worse. Vincent stood up, pulling out his phone. I'm calling my doctor. Dr. Sarah Martinez. She's the best pediatrician in the city. She makes house calls for emergencies. I can't afford. You're not paying for it, Vincent said firmly. I am. And before you argue, think about them. Think about what they need right now. Keisha looked down at her babies, then back at Vincent. For the first time since he'd walked into her life, she seemed to really see him. Not as a threat or a stranger, but as a man who was just as lost and scared as she was. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Vincent made the call, his voice steady and authoritative as he explained the situation to Dr. Martinez. Within minutes, she'd agreed to come immediately, bringing whatever medications the babies might need. She'll be here in 20 minutes, Vincent said, ending the call. Thank you, Keisha said, and the words seemed to cost her something. I know I haven't been. I know I've been difficult. You've been protective, Vincent corrected. You've been a good mother. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled and squeezed Keisha's shoulder. I'll let you two talk. But Mija, maybe it's time to stop running from help when it comes looking for you. As she left, Vincent and Keisha sat in comfortable silence for the first time since they'd met. The babies had quieted, sensing perhaps that help was coming. The apartment's small space felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. Tell me about her, Keisha said finally. Tell me about my mother when she was young. Vincent smiled, pulling out his phone to show her more photos. She was stubborn just like you. And she was brave just like you. And she loved harder than anyone I've ever known. Just like me. Just like you. Outside, Dr. Martinez's car pulled up to the curb. Help was arriving, and for the first time in months, Keisha felt like she might not have to face tomorrow alone. Dr. Sarah Martinez's gentle hands worked with practiced efficiency as she examined the twins, her stethoscope moving across their small chests while she murmured soft reassurances. The fever had broken in both babies after the medication she'd administered, and color was slowly returning to their faces. Vincent watched from the corner of the room, his heart still racing from the terror of seeing his nephew and niece so sick. "They're going to be fine," Dr. Martinez said, packing her medical bag. "It's just a respiratory infection, common in babies their age, especially with the weather changing. The antibiotics will clear it up in a few days." She handed Keisha a small pharmacy bag. "This should last the full course of treatment, and I've included some vitamins and formula samples as well." Keisha's eyes filled with tears. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing," Dr. Martinez said firmly, glancing at Vincent. "This one's already taken care of everything, including follow-up visits if needed." After the doctor left, the apartment felt different. Lighter somehow, as if the immediate crisis had cleared the air between them. Vincent sat on the edge of the couch, while Keisha settled into her rocking chair with Malik, who was finally sleeping peacefully. Zora lay in the crib, her breathing steady and normal. "I need to know what happened to her," Keisha said quietly. "I need to know why my mother ran, why she changed her name, why she never told me about you." Vincent pulled out his phone, scrolling through the photos until he found the one he'd been avoiding. A family portrait from 1998, 3 years before everything fell apart. He, Aaliyah, and their parents stood in front of their childhood home in Palmer Park, everyone smiling, everyone unaware of the tragedy that was coming. "We were happy once," he said, showing her the photo. "Our dad, Marcus Alexander, was a mechanic. He owned a small shop on 8 Mile. Our mom, Diana, was a teacher at Cass Technical High School. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed." Keisha studied the photo, her finger tracing her mother's young face. She looked so carefree. She was the star of the drama club, honor roll every semester, had a full scholarship to Wayne State University. She was going to be a teacher like Mom. Vincent's voice caught. And then everything changed in one night. February 15th, 2001. The memory hit him like a physical blow, as vivid as if it had happened yesterday. He was 17, sitting in his bedroom working on calculus homework when the phone rang. The sound had been normal at first, just another evening call. But then he'd heard his mother's scream, a sound so raw and primal that it had frozen his blood. "Car accident," Vincent said, his voice barely above a whisper. A drunk driver ran a red light on Woodward Avenue. Mom and Dad were coming home from their anniversary dinner. They died instantly. Keisha's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God. Vincent, I'm so sorry. Aaliyah was 18, I was 17. Social services wanted to separate us, put me in foster care. But Aaliyah fought them. She dropped out of college, got 2 jobs, became my legal guardian. She gave up everything for me." Vincent pulled up another photo, this one from later that year, showing Aaliyah in a fast food uniform, exhaustion etched in every line of her face. But her arm was around Vincent's shoulders, and she was smiling. She worked at McDonald's during the day and cleaned offices at night. She'd come home at midnight, help me with homework, make sure I ate breakfast, get me to school. She was just a kid herself, but she was raising me like I was her own son. "She loved you," Keisha said, tears streaming down her face. "I can see it in her eyes. I know she did, but I was angry all the time. I was grieving, and I was 17, and I blamed her for everything. I blamed her for Mom and Dad's death, for having to move to a smaller apartment, for the fact that my friend's parents looked at us with pity." Vincent's voice cracked. "I was so cruel to her, Keisha. I said terrible things." The memories flooded back. Every harsh word, every slammed door, every time he'd thrown her sacrifices back in her face. The night he'd screamed that he hated her, that he wished she'd died instead of their parents. The way her face had crumpled, the way she'd whispered, "I'm sorry," before locking herself in her room. "What happened the night she disappeared?" Keisha asked gently. Vincent stood up, pacing to the window. The November night was clear, stars barely visible through the city's glow. It was May 23rd, 2001. My graduation day. She'd been working double shifts for weeks to afford a nice dinner to celebrate. She was so proud, kept telling everyone her little brother was going to college. He turned back to Keisha, his face raw with old pain. But I was dating this girl, Jessica, whose parents had money. They'd invited me to their graduation party, and I wanted to go. I wanted to feel normal, to be around people who didn't look at me like I was a charity case. You were 17, Keisha said softly. You were allowed to want normal things. I told Aaliyah I wasn't coming to dinner. I said I had better things to do than sit around feeling sorry for myself with her. Vincent's voice broke. She begged me to stay. She said she'd made reservations at this nice restaurant downtown, that she'd been saving for months. And I told her I was tired of her trying to replace our parents. I told her she was just my sister, not my mother, and I didn't need her anymore. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Malik stirred in Keisha's arms, and she adjusted him gently, her eyes never leaving Vincent's face. She just stood there in the doorway, watching me get ready for the party. She was wearing this yellow dress, the prettiest thing she owned, and the necklace. She always wore that necklace on special occasions. And she said, "I love you, baby brother. I hope you have fun tonight." Vincent pulled out his wallet, removing a small piece of paper worn soft with age. She left me this note. Keisha read it aloud, her voice trembling. V. I'm sorry I wasn't enough. I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed. Take care of yourself. Love always, A. I found it on my pillow when I got home from the party at 3 a.m. Her clothes were gone, her jewelry, everything. Like she'd never existed. Vincent sank back onto the couch. I called the police, but they said she was 18. She had a right to leave. I hired private investigators over the years, but there was never any trace. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. She came here, Keisha said, understanding dawning in her eyes. She came to Detroit and started over. But why Detroit? Why here? Keisha got up, walking to a small wooden box on her dresser. Inside were her mother's few personal belongings, some jewelry, old photos, and a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. She pulled out a faded program from a church. New Hope Baptist Church, she said, showing him the program. Mom went here every Sunday when I was little. Pastor Williams, that's where she got the last name. He was like a father to her. He died when I was 12, but before he passed, he told me that my mother had come to him broken and scared, and that he'd helped her build a new life. Vincent took the program, studying the address. This is only 10 minutes from where we grew up. She was so close all those years. She was hiding, Keisha said. But not from you. From the pain. From the guilt she felt about leaving you. Mrs. Rodriguez had been right. Denise Williams had nightmares about leaving her little brother, not about him finding her. She'd been running from her own perceived failure, not from Vincent's anger. She met my father at the church, Keisha continued. Jerome Williams, he was Pastor Williams' nephew. They dated for about a year, got married when I was born. But it didn't last. He left when I was 2. So she was alone again, Vincent said. But she had me. And she had her faith. She worked as a teacher's aide, took night classes to get her degree. She never remarried, never even dated seriously. She said she had everything she needed with me and her church family. Keisha pulled out another photo. This one showing her older Denise in a graduation cap and gown, holding a teaching certificate. She finally became a teacher, just like she'd always wanted. She taught 3rd grade at Marcus Garvey Elementary. Her students loved her. She achieved her dream, Vincent said, pride mixing with grief in his voice. She did. But she was never truly happy. There was always this sadness in her eyes, especially around holidays. She'd look at me sometimes like she was seeing someone else, like she was remembering something painful. She was seeing me, Vincent realized. She was wondering if I was okay, if I'd made it to college, if I was happy. She kept newspaper clippings, Keisha said, pulling out a manila envelope. I found these after she died. She'd been following your career for years. Vincent opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were dozens of articles about Alexander Industries, about his business success, about his philanthropic work. Some were yellowed with age, dating back to his early days as an entrepreneur. In the margins, Aaliyah had written notes. So proud of my baby brother. He did it. He became everything I knew he could be. She was proud of you, Keisha said through her tears. She followed every success, every achievement. She never stopped loving you. Vincent broke down completely, 23 years of grief and regret pouring out of him. Keisha moved to sit beside him, still holding Malik, her free hand reaching out to touch his shoulder. She wanted to come back, she said softly. After I was born, she talked about it constantly. She'd say, maybe when Keisha's older, we'll go visit Uncle Vincent. But as time went on, she convinced herself that you were better off without her. She thought she'd ruined your life by leaving. She saved my life by leaving, Vincent said. I was so angry, so bitter. If she'd stayed, I would have destroyed us both. Her leaving forced me to grow up, to take responsibility for myself. She knew that, Keisha said. In her heart she knew. That's why she kept the necklace. She said it was proof that love could survive anything, even separation. Vincent looked at the emerald pendant around Keisha's neck, understanding its significance for the first time. It wasn't just a family heirloom. It was a beacon of hope, a promise that love could endure across time and distance. She talked about you all the time, Keisha continued. She'd tell me stories about how smart you were, how you could fix anything, how you always stood up for the underdog. She said you had the biggest heart of anyone she'd ever known. I spent 23 years thinking she'd left because I wasn't worth staying for, Vincent said. I built my whole life around proving I was worthy of love. You were always worthy, Keisha said firmly. And she knew that. That's why she could let go, because she knew you were strong enough to make it without her. They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of revealed truth settling between them. Outside, Detroit hummed with late-night activity, but inside the small apartment, two wounded souls were finally beginning to heal. I want to tell you about her last days, Keisha said eventually. When she was dying, she made me promise to find you if anything ever happened to me. She said the necklace would lead me to family when I needed it most. She was right, Vincent said. It did. There's something else, Keisha said, reaching into the wooden box again. She left you something. She pulled out a small wrapped package, the paper yellowed with age. Vincent's name was written on it in Aaliyah's careful handwriting. She wrapped this 23 years ago, Keisha said. She said if you ever found us, I should give it to you. Vincent opened the package with trembling hands. Inside was a pocket watch. Their father's watch, the one he'd carried every day until his death. Engraved on the back were the words, "To V, time heals all wounds. Love always, eh?" She wanted you to have it, Keisha said. She said Dad would want you to carry it. Vincent clutched the watch to his chest, feeling the weight of his father's memory, his sister's love, and the promise of a future he'd never dared to hope for. We're not strangers, he said, looking at Keisha and the sleeping babies. We're family. We've always been family. Yes, Keisha said, smiling through her tears. We have. What family secrets do you think still need to be revealed? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The morning sun streamed through the apartment's small windows, casting golden rectangles across the worn carpet. Vincent had spent the night on Keisha's couch, unable to bear the thought of leaving his newfound family again. He woke to the sound of soft humming, a melody he recognized from their childhood, one their mother used to sing while making breakfast. Keisha stood at the tiny stove, wearing a bright turquoise robe, gently swaying Zara in one arm while stirring scrambled eggs with the other. The baby's fever had completely broken, and she was alert and curious, her dark eyes, Vincent's eyes, tracking the movement of the wooden spoon. "That song," Vincent said, his voice thick with sleep and emotion. "Mom used to sing that." Keisha smiled, not turning around. "I know. She taught it to me when I was little. Said it was an old family song, passed down through generations." She glanced over her shoulder. "Coffee's ready. I hope you don't mind it strong. It's the only way I can function on 3 hours of sleep." Vincent poured himself a cup from the chipped ceramic pot, inhaling the rich aroma. "Strong is perfect. Thank you." The domestic scene felt surreal. He'd spent the last 15 years waking up alone in his penthouse apartment, eating breakfast prepared by his housekeeper while reading financial reports. But here, in this cramped space with mismatched furniture and peeling paint, he felt more at home than he had in decades. "Here, let me," Vincent said, reaching for Zora. The baby went to him easily, her tiny fist immediately grabbing for his shirt collar. "Good morning, beautiful girl. You're feeling better, aren't you?" Keisha watched them together, her heart swelling at the sight of her daughter safe in her uncle's arms. "She likes you. She's usually shy with strangers." "We're not strangers," Vincent said, making silly faces at Zora until she giggled. "We're family. She knows that, don't you, sweetheart?" Malik stirred in his bouncy seat, and Keisha quickly moved to check on him. His fever was gone too, and he was reaching for his favorite stuffed elephant, a worn grey toy that had seen better days. "That's Mr. Peanuts," Keisha explained, noticing Vincent's curious look. "I found him at a thrift store when the twins were born. He's been Malik's security blanket ever since." "Mr. Peanuts," Vincent repeated, crouching down to shake the elephant's trunk. "Nice to meet you, sir. I'm Uncle Vincent." The formality made Keisha laugh, a real laugh, not the polite chuckle she'd given him yesterday. "Uncle Vincent. That sounds weird, doesn't it? But good weird." "The best kind of weird," Vincent agreed. He stood up, still holding Zora. "Keisha, I want to talk to you about something, but I need you to hear me out completely before you say no." Her smile faded slightly. "What is it?" "I want to help. Not just with the medical bills or the immediate stuff, but really help. I want to be part of your lives, part of the twins' lives. I want to be the uncle I should have been from the beginning." Keisha busied herself with plating the eggs, her movements suddenly stiff. "Vincent, I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't just become your charity project. I've been taking care of myself and my children just fine." "Have you?" Vincent asked gently. "Keisha, you were about to sell your mother's necklace to pay for medicine. You're living in an apartment with a leaking ceiling and a broken heater. You work 2 jobs and still can't afford childcare. That's not fine, that's survival." "Survival is what I know," Keisha said, her voice defensive. "I've been doing it my whole life. I don't need." "You don't need me," Vincent interrupted. "I know that. You're strong, you're capable, you're an incredible mother. But need isn't the same as want. And I need you to want me in your life, because I can't lose my family again." The vulnerability in his voice stopped her protests. She turned to face him, seeing the fear in his eyes. The same fear she'd carried her whole life, the terror of being left alone. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. "But I can't let you just fix everything. I need to contribute. I need to feel like I'm earning my place in this family." Vincent shifted Zora to his other arm, thinking, what if we were partners? What if you let me help with the big things, better housing, childcare, the twins' college funds, and you help me with something I can't do alone? Like what? Like learning how to be a family again. Like teaching me how to be an uncle. Like helping me understand what Aaliyah would have wanted for all of us. Keisha studied his face, seeing the sincerity there. Partners. Partners. Equal partners. I provide the resources, you provide the guidance. We both learn as we go. She extended her hand, and he shook it solemnly. Deal. But I have conditions. Name them. First, no more surprise house calls from private doctors. We find a regular pediatrician and keep normal appointments like normal people. Agreed. Second, I keep working. Maybe not 2 jobs, but I'm not becoming a kept woman. I need purpose beyond just being a mother. Absolutely. What do you want to do? Keisha hesitated. I've always wanted to go back to school. Finish my degree in early childhood education. Maybe teach like my mother did. Wayne State has an excellent education program, Vincent said. I should know. I'm on the board of trustees. Of course you are, Keisha laughed, shaking her head. Third condition. No using your influence to get me special treatment. I earn my grades like everyone else. Deal. Though I reserve the right to brag about my brilliant niece to anyone who'll listen. I can live with that. Keisha paused, then added, one more thing. I want to visit their graves. My mother and your parents. I want to take the twins to meet their grandparents. Vincent's eyes filled with tears. I'd like that too. I haven't been to the cemetery in years. I was too ashamed to face them. We'll go together, Keisha said. As a family. The word hung between them, warm and full of possibility. Vincent looked around the small apartment, at the mismatched furniture, the cheerful artwork Keisha had created to make the place feel like home, the photos of Aaliyah scattered on every surface. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. I have an idea, he said suddenly. What if we don't rush into anything? What if we take our time, get to know each other properly before making any big changes? What do you mean? I mean, what if I spent time here regularly? Helped with the twins, learned your routines, became part of your daily life gradually? And maybe you and the babies could visit my place sometimes, see how the other half lives. Keisha considered this. Like a trial run? Exactly. We figure out how to blend our worlds without losing what makes each of them special. I like that, Keisha said. Gradual. Natural. As if on cue, Malik started fussing, and Vincent automatically moved to comfort him while Keisha finished breakfast. The choreography was awkward at first. They bumped into each other in the tiny kitchen, had to negotiate who held which baby when, but gradually they found their rhythm. He's hungry, Keisha said, preparing a bottle. How can you tell? Vincent asked, watching Malik's increasingly urgent cries. The cry is different. Hunger sounds more demanding, like he's offended by the delay. When he's tired, it's more whimpery. When he's uncomfortable, it's sharp and quick. Vincent listened carefully, memorizing the differences. And Zora? She's quieter about everything. She'll fuss for a few minutes, then give up and just look pathetic until someone notices her. She's manipulative that way. Smart girl, Vincent said, kissing the top of Zora's head. She gets that from her mother. And her grandmother, Keisha added. Mom was the queen of the guilt trip. She could make you feel terrible about something you didn't even do. I remember, Vincent laughed. She used to give me this look when I tracked mud through the house. Never said a word, just looked at me until I went back and cleaned it up. She did the same thing to me. I thought it was a special mom power. It was. The Alexander women have always been strong. They spent the morning sharing stories. Vincent telling Keisha about their childhood adventures, Keisha sharing memories of her mother's wisdom and humor. With each story, the gaps between past and present began to close. Tell me about your life now, Keisha said as they sat on the couch, each holding a baby. What's it like being a billionaire? Do you have a massive house? A yacht? A private jet? I have a penthouse apartment downtown, a house in the Hamptons, and yes, a private jet. But they're all empty. I work 16-hour days, attend charity events where I don't know anyone's name, and go home to silence. Vincent looked down at Zora, who was trying to grab his nose. I built an empire, but I forgot to build a life. Is that why you never got married? Never had kids? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. I was afraid. Afraid that if I loved someone, they'd leave like everyone else had. It was easier to stay alone than to risk the pain again. But you weren't alone, Keisha said gently. You had people who cared about you. Employees. Business associates. People who needed things from me. But not family. Not real connection. You have that now, Keisha said. We're here, and we're not going anywhere. Vincent looked at her. This brave, beautiful woman who'd survived so much and still had room in her heart for kindness. I want to tell you something, and I need you to believe me when I say it. Okay. Yesterday, when I saw you in that jewelry store, when I realized who you were, it was like I could breathe again for the first time in 23 years. You saved me, Keisha. You, and these babies brought me back to life. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. We saved each other. Yeah, Vincent said, his voice thick with emotion. We did. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the twins play with their fingers and make soft baby sounds. The November sun climbed higher, warming the small apartment and casting everything in a golden glow. Vincent, Keisha said eventually. Yeah. Thank you for not giving up on finding us. Thank you for being the man my mother always said you were. Thank you for being exactly like her, Vincent replied. For being strong and stubborn and full of love. She would be so happy right now, Keisha said. She would love seeing us all together. She is seeing us, Vincent said firmly. Somewhere. She's watching and smiling, and probably telling our parents that her plan worked perfectly. Her plan? The necklace. She knew it would bring us together when the time was right. She knew you'd need family, and she knew I'd need purpose. She orchestrated this whole thing from beyond the grave. Keisha laughed, touching the emerald pendant at her throat. That sounds like something she'd do. Always thinking 3 steps ahead. She was the smartest person I ever knew, Vincent said. And she raised an incredible daughter. We're going to be okay, Keisha said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. Better than okay, Vincent agreed. We're going to be a family. What do you think will be the biggest challenge for Vincent and Keisha as they build their new family bond? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to see how this heartwarming story continues. As the afternoon wore on, they fell into an easy routine. Vincent learning how to change diapers and prepare bottles, Keisha teaching him the twins' schedules and preferences. For the first time in either of their lives, they weren't facing the world alone. They were home. 2 days had passed since Vincent and Keisha's heart-to-heart conversation, and their newfound rhythm felt natural, almost effortless. Vincent had taken the week off from his corporate responsibilities, something that had sent shockwaves through the boardroom of Alexander Holdings. For the first time in 15 years, Vincent Alexander was unreachable during business hours. He'd spent Thursday evening at Keisha's apartment, learning to give the twins their baths and reading them bedtime stories from worn picture books. The domesticity felt foreign yet comforting, like wearing clothes that had been tailored specifically for him after years of ill-fitting suits. But Friday morning brought reality crashing back. Vincent sat in his corner office on the 47th floor of the Renaissance Center, watching the Detroit River flow below while his assistant, Patricia, briefed him on the week's missed opportunities. The mahogany desk was covered with contracts requiring his signature, investment reports demanding his attention, and a stack of pink message slips from increasingly frustrated business partners. Mr. Alexander, Patricia said, her voice tight with barely concealed concern, Henderson Industries is threatening to pull out of the merger if you don't personally attend Monday's board meeting. They're questioning your commitment to the deal. Vincent barely looked up from the photo on his desk. A picture Keisha had taken yesterday of him and the twins, all 3 of them covered in strained carrots from Malik's disastrous first attempt at solid food. Tell Henderson I'll be there. And the Rothschild Foundation Gala tomorrow night? You're supposed to deliver the keynote speech. They're honoring your philanthropic contributions. Cancel it. Patricia's eyebrows shot up. Sir, you can't cancel. The invitations went out months ago. There are 300 of Detroit's most influential people expecting. I said cancel it. Vincent's voice carried an edge that made Patricia step back. Reschedule for next month. Mr. Alexander, forgive me, but this behavior is highly unusual. The board members have been calling all week. They're concerned about your absence. Vincent finally looked up, his eyes cold in a way Patricia hadn't seen since the early days of his career. My personal life is none of the board's concern. Of course not, sir. But there are rumors circulating. People are saying you've been seen in less affluent neighborhoods, that you've been. Patricia struggled for the right words. Associating with people outside your usual social circle. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Associating? I'm just repeating what I've heard, sir. There's talk that you've been visiting housing projects, that you've been seen with a young woman and 2 infants. People are wondering if this is some kind of publicity stunt for your charitable foundation. Vincent stood slowly, his hands pressed flat against the desk. Get out! Sir, I didn't mean. Get out! Now! Patricia hurried from the office, leaving Vincent alone with his thoughts and the view of the city below. The same city where his sister struggled to survive while he built monuments to his own success. His phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. Twins are napping. Perfect time for your first diaper-changing lesson when you get here. The simple message should have made him smile. Instead, it filled him with dread. What was he doing? Playing house with a woman and children he'd known for 3 days? Pretending he could be part of their world when his own world was falling apart? Another buzz. This time from his lawyer. Vincent, we need to discuss the Henderson merger. Board meeting moved to 4 p.m. today. Your presence is mandatory. Vincent stared at both messages, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He'd built Alexander Holdings from nothing, turned it into a billion-dollar empire. Hundreds of employees depended on him. Stockholders trusted him with their investments. He couldn't just walk away from that for a fantasy of family life. Could he? His phone rang. The caller ID showed Keisha's number. Hey, he answered, trying to keep his voice light. Vincent? Are you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. Just dealing with some work stuff. Oh, there was a pause. I was calling because Zara said her first word today. Well, it sounded like mama, but it might have been BABA. Either way, I thought you'd want to know. That's great, Keisha. You sure you're okay? You sound distant. Vincent closed his eyes, pressing his fingers to his temples. I'm having a difficult day at the office. Maybe I should skip coming over tonight. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Vincent wondered if the call had dropped. Keisha, I'm here. Her voice was careful, controlled. Of course. I understand. Work is important. It's not that. No, really. I get it. You have responsibilities. We'll be fine. Keisha, please don't. I should go. The twins are waking up. Thanks for calling. She hung up before he could respond. Vincent stared at his phone, knowing he'd just made a terrible mistake, but unable to figure out how to fix it. The walls of his office suddenly felt like a prison, but stepping outside them felt like stepping into chaos. Keisha set her phone down with trembling hands. She'd heard that tone before. The careful distance of someone pulling away, the polite coolness that preceded abandonment. She'd been foolish to believe this fairy tale could last. Mama? Zara babbled from her bouncy seat, reaching chubby arms toward Keisha. Hey, baby girl, Keisha said, forcing a smile as she picked up her daughter. It's just us again, isn't it? Like always. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. For 48 hours, they'd been a family. Vincent had been Uncle Vincent, changing diapers and singing lullabies and making silly faces until the twins giggled. He'd been present, engaged, genuinely happy. Now he was pulling away, and Keisha felt the familiar sting of rejection that had followed her through childhood foster homes and failed relationships. She'd let herself believe she was worth staying for, but people like her didn't get fairy tale endings. She carried Zara to the window, looking out at the grey November sky. Maybe it's better this way, baby. We don't need anyone else. We've been doing fine on our own. But fine wasn't the same as happy. And for 2 days, she'd been happy. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. "I'm sorry. Can we talk?" Keisha stared at the message, her finger hovering over the reply button. Part of her wanted to text back, to give him another chance to explain. But a bigger part, the part that had learned early that hope was dangerous, wanted to delete his number and pretend the last 3 days had never happened. She set the phone aside without responding. The simple message should have made him smile. Instead, it filled him with dread. What was he doing? Playing house with a woman and children he'd known for 3 days? Pretending he could be part of their world when his own world was falling apart? Another buzz. This time from his lawyer. "Vincent, we need to discuss the Henderson merger. Board meeting moved to 4 p.m. today. Your presence is mandatory." Vincent stared at both messages, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He'd built Alexander Holdings from nothing, turned it into a billion-dollar empire. Hundreds of employees depended on him. Stockholders trusted him with their investments. He couldn't just walk away from that for a fantasy of family life. Could he? His phone rang. The caller ID showed Keisha's number. "Hey," he answered, trying to keep his voice light. "Vincent? Are you okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine. Just dealing with some work stuff." "Oh." There was a pause. "I was calling because Zara said her first word today." "Well, it sounded like mama, but it might have been BABA. Either way, I thought you'd want to know." That's great, Keisha. You sure you're okay? You sound distant." Vincent closed his eyes, pressing his fingers to his temples. "I'm having a difficult day at the office. Maybe I should skip coming over tonight." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Vincent wondered if the call had dropped. "Keisha, I'm here." Her voice was careful, controlled. "Of course. I understand. Work is important. It's not that. No, really. I get it. You have responsibilities. We'll be fine." "Keisha, please don't. I should go. The twins are waking up. Thanks for calling." She hung up before he could respond. Vincent stared at his phone, knowing he'd just made a terrible mistake, but unable to figure out how to fix it. The walls of his office suddenly felt like a prison, but stepping outside them felt like stepping into chaos. Keisha set her phone down with trembling hands. She'd heard that tone before. The careful distance of someone pulling away, the polite coolness that preceded abandonment. She'd been foolish to believe this fairy tale could last. "Mama?" Zara babbled from her bouncy seat, reaching chubby arms toward Keisha. "Hey, baby girl," Keisha said, forcing a smile as she picked up her daughter. "It's just us again, isn't it? Like always." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. For 48 hours, they'd been a family. Vincent had been Uncle Vincent, changing diapers and singing lullabies and making silly faces until the twins giggled. He'd been present, engaged, genuinely happy. Now he was pulling away, and Keisha felt the familiar sting of rejection that had followed her through childhood foster homes and failed relationships. She'd let herself believe she was worth staying for, but people like her didn't get fairy tale endings. She carried Zara to the window, looking out at the grey November sky. "Maybe it's better this way, baby. We don't need anyone else. We've been doing fine on our own." But fine wasn't the same as happy. And for 2 days, she'd been happy. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. "I'm sorry. Can we talk?" Keisha stared at the message, her finger hovering over the reply button. Part of her wanted to text back, to give him another chance to explain. But a bigger part, the part that had learned early that hope was dangerous, wanted to delete his number and pretend the last 3 days had never happened. She set the phone aside without responding. The boardroom was filled with tension thick enough to cut. 12 men and women in expensive suits sat around the polished conference table, their faces masks of professional concern. Vincent sat at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence notably absent. "Vincent," said Harrison Webb, the company's chief operating officer, We need to address the elephant in the room. Your behavior this week has been concerning. My behavior? Vincent's voice was dangerously quiet. Missing meetings, cancelling appearances, being unreachable for days at a time. This isn't like you. Maybe it's exactly like me, Vincent said. Maybe I'm tired of being available 24 hours a day for a company that will function perfectly well without me hovering over every decision. The board members exchanged glances. Margaret Forster, the longest-serving board member, leaned forward. Vincent, we're worried about you. There are rumors that you've been involved with some questionable people. Questionable people? Vincent's tone could have frozen the Detroit River. A single mother from the projects. 2 illegitimate children. People are saying you're having some kind of breakdown, that you're making poor decisions that could reflect badly on the company. Vincent stood so abruptly that his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. Those questionable people are my family. Your family? Harrison's eyebrows shot up. Vincent, you don't have any family. That's what makes you so effective as a CEO. No distractions, no divided loyalties. I have a niece and 2 grandnieces, Vincent said, his voice shaking with fury. The daughter of my sister, who died while I was too busy building this empire to even know she existed. The room fell silent. Margaret cleared her throat. Vincent, I understand you're going through something difficult, but you can't let personal issues affect your professional judgment. The Henderson merger alone is worth $2 billion. You can't jeopardize that for some family drama. Family drama? Vincent repeated, his voice rising. My sister died alone and poor while I was sitting in boardrooms like this one, counting money and pretending it mattered. Her daughter has been struggling to survive while I've been buying art and attending galas. That's not drama, that's tragedy. And it's unfortunate, Harrison said carefully, but it's not the company's responsibility. You can set up a trust fund, make a donation to charity in your sister's name. Handle it quietly and professionally. Handle it quietly, Vincent repeated. You want me to throw money at my family and pretend they don't exist, so I can focus on making more money. We want you to be the CEO we hired, Margaret said firmly. The man who built this company from nothing, who never let personal feelings interfere with business decisions. That's who you are, Vincent. Don't let guilt make you into someone you're not. Vincent looked around the table at these people he'd worked with for years, people he'd considered friends. They were staring at him with the same expression he'd seen on Patricia's face earlier. Concern mixed with fear that he was losing his edge, becoming soft. You're right, he said quietly. I am the CEO you hired. Cold, calculating, emotionally detached. Someone who can make difficult decisions without letting feelings get in the way. Exactly, Harrison said, relief evident in his voice. So you'll refocus on the company? The Henderson merger? Vincent nodded slowly. I'll handle it. All of it. The professional way. As the meeting continued, Vincent found himself making the same decision he'd made 23 years ago when his parents died. He would bury his feelings, lock away his heart, and focus on what he did best, building wealth and maintaining control. It was easier than risking more pain. Keisha sat on her couch, mechanically feeding Malik his bottle, while Zara slept in her lap. The apartment felt different now, smaller, quieter, emptier. She'd grown accustomed to Vincent's presence in just 2 days, and his absence left a void that seemed to echo. Her phone had been buzzing all evening with texts from Vincent, each one more desperate than the last. Please let me explain. I made a mistake. Can we talk? I don't want to lose you. Any of you. Keisha, please. I'm sorry. She'd read each one and deleted it without responding. She'd been down this road before. Men who were interested until reality set in, who made promises they couldn't keep when faced with the actual responsibility of caring for someone else. At least Vincent had been honest about it. He'd pulled away before she could get too attached, before the twins could get used to having an uncle who might disappear without warning. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She knew it was Vincent before she even looked through the peephole. He stood in the hallway, still wearing his expensive suit but looking disheveled, his usually perfect hair mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. "Keisha, please," he said through the door. "I know you're in there. I can see the light under the door." She didn't respond. "I messed up. I let them get in my head, and I made a terrible mistake. But I'm here now, and I want to make it right." Still nothing. "I know you have no reason to trust me. I know I've proven that I'm exactly the kind of person who runs when things get complicated. But I'm asking you to give me one more chance. Please." Keisha closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. She wanted to open the door, wanted to believe that he'd come back, because he genuinely cared. But trust, once broken, was almost impossible to rebuild. "I brought something," Vincent said, his voice muffled by the door. "Something I want to show you." Despite herself, Keisha's curiosity was piqued. She adjusted the twins in her arms and moved to the door, pressing her ear against it. "I'm going to leave it here," Vincent said. "If you don't want to see me, I understand. But please, look at what I brought. It might help you understand why I reacted the way I did." She heard his footsteps retreating down the hallway, then the sound of the building's front door closing. After waiting several minutes to make sure he was gone, Keisha carefully opened her door. On the floor was a manila envelope, thick with documents. Her name was written on the front in Vincent's careful handwriting. Against her better judgment, she picked it up. Inside were legal documents, incorporation papers, board meeting minutes, financial statements. But at the very top was a handwritten letter on Vincent's personal stationery. "Keisha, I've spent the last 15 years building Alexander Holdings into what it is today. I've sacrificed everything, friends, relationships, family, happiness, for the pursuit of success. I told myself it was worth it, that being the best at what I do was enough. Today, my board of directors made it clear that they expect me to choose between the company and you. They see you and the twins as a distraction, a weakness that will compromise my effectiveness as a CEO. They're right. You have made me weak. You've made me want things I gave up on years ago. You've made me remember what it feels like to care about something more than profit margins and stock prices. I'm weak because I love you. All of you. Not just because you're my family, but because you've shown me what I've been missing. You've shown me who I could be if I had the courage to choose love over fear. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me prove that I can be the man you and the twins deserve. The man Aaliyah believed I could be. The documents in this envelope are my resignation letter and the papers to transfer my controlling shares in Alexander Holdings to a trust fund for the twins. I'm choosing them. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. If you'll have me. Vincent." Keisha's hands shook as she read the letter twice, then 3 times. She looked at the legal documents, resignation letters, trust fund paperwork, all dated today and signed in Vincent's bold signature. He'd given up everything. For them. Her phone buzzed with one final text. "I'm in the parking lot. I'll wait as long as it takes. If you want me to leave, just text the word go, and I'll never bother you again." Keisha looked down at the twins, both sleeping peacefully in their bouncy seats. They deserved an uncle who would fight for them, who would choose them over everything else. They deserved a family. And maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be chosen too. She grabbed her coat and headed for the door. Have you ever had to choose between security and love? What do you think Keisha should do? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible story. The November wind cut through Keisha's bright orange jacket as she stepped into the parking lot behind her apartment building. The streetlights cast long shadows across the cracked asphalt, and she could see her breath in small puffs of white vapor. She'd left the twins with Mrs. Rodriguez next door, the elderly woman who'd been watching them occasionally when Keisha worked late shifts. Vincent's black Mercedes sat under the single working streetlight, engine running. Through the windshield, She could see him hunched over the steering wheel, his head in his hands. He looked broken, defeated. Nothing like the confident billionaire who'd walked into Goldstein's jewelry 3 days ago. Keisha stood 20 feet away, the legal documents clutched in her trembling hands. The resignation letter felt impossibly heavy, weighted with the magnitude of what he'd sacrificed. $2 billion. A lifetime of work. His entire identity. For her. For 2 babies he'd known for 3 days. "You're an idiot," she called out, her voice carrying across the empty lot. Vincent's head snapped up, and he quickly got out of the car. "Keisha, a complete and total idiot," she continued, walking closer. "You gave up everything. Your company, your career, your future. For what? For us?" "Yes," he said simply, his voice hoarse. "For you." "Why?" The question came out as a whisper, but in the quiet night, it might as well have been a shout. "Why would you do something so stupid?" Vincent stepped closer, his hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. "Because I finally realized what my mother meant when she said family isn't about blood, it's about choice. For 23 years, I chose money over people. I chose success over love. I chose safety over vulnerability. And now I choose you. I choose Malik and Zora. I choose showing up, even when it's hard. I choose being Uncle Vincent, even if I'm terrible at it. I choose being part of a family, even if it scares me to death." Keisha's eyes filled with tears. "You don't even know us." "Not really. 3 days, Vincent. That's all we've had." "I know enough," he said, taking another step forward. "I know you hum our mother's lullabies when you think no one's listening. I know you cut the crusts off your peanut butter sandwiches, even though you're 25 years old. I know you talk to Aaliyah's picture every morning before you start your day. You've been watching me. I've been learning you. Learning what it means to have a family again." Vincent's voice broke slightly. "I know Malik laughs when you make funny faces during diaper changes. I know Zara falls asleep faster when you rub her back in small circles. I know you're afraid of thunderstorms, but you'll stand in the rain if it means protecting your children. Anyone could observe those things. But I also know you cry in the shower, so the twins can't hear you. I know you skip meals to make sure they have enough formula. I know you've been alone for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to have someone choose you first." Keisha's composure cracked. "Don't. I'm choosing you first, Keisha. Not because I have to, not because I feel guilty, but because in 3 days you've shown me more love than I've felt in 23 years. You've given me purpose. You've given me hope. I'm not some charity case," she said, her voice defensive. "I don't need you to save me. I'm not trying to save you. I'm asking you to save me." Vincent pulled his hands from his pockets, and she could see they were shaking. "I'm asking you to save a man who's spent his entire adult life building walls instead of bridges. I'm asking you to teach me how to be the person Aaliyah believed I could be." The wind picked up, sending dead leaves skittering across the asphalt. Keisha pulled her jacket tighter, still clutching the legal documents. "Your board was right," she said quietly. "We are from different worlds. You're used to private jets and charity galas. I'm used to food stamps and Medicaid. How is that supposed to work?" "I don't know," Vincent admitted. "But I know I'd rather figure it out with you than go back to my empty penthouse and pretend I'm not dying inside. What if we try and it doesn't work? What if we hurt each other? What if we hurt the twins?" Vincent moved closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the hope warring with fear. "Then we'll have tried. We'll have chosen love over fear, connection over isolation. Isn't that better than spending the rest of our lives wondering what if?" Keisha looked down at the resignation letter, then back at Vincent. "You really gave up everything." "I gave up everything that didn't matter to keep everything that does. The twins and we're not easy. We're messy and loud and complicated. We need things, lots of things. Medical care and childcare, and a better apartment, and I need you," Vincent interrupted. "I need to hear Malik's laugh when he sees me walk in the door. I need to feel Zora's tiny hand wrapped around my finger. I need to watch you be an amazing mother and learn how to be a decent uncle. I need to visit Aaliyah's grave with you and tell her that her plan worked. Her plan? The necklace. She knew it would bring us together when we needed each other most. She knew I'd be lost without family, and she knew you'd need family to help you build the life you deserved. Keisha touched the emerald pendant at her throat, feeling its familiar weight. She always was too smart for her own good. She was brilliant, and she raised someone just like her. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Keisha could feel the pull of old patterns, the instinct to protect herself by pushing him away. But she could also feel something stronger, the desperate longing for connection, for someone to choose her and her children not despite their complications, but because of them. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too, Vincent said. I'm terrified that I'll mess this up, that I'll let you down, that I'll prove I'm not worthy of this gift you're giving me. What gift? The chance to be part of something bigger than myself. The chance to matter to someone. The chance to be loved. Keisha looked at this man who'd given up billions of dollars for the possibility of belonging to her small, chaotic family. He wasn't perfect. He was awkward with the twins, clueless about real-world struggles, and probably going to make 1,000 mistakes as he learned how to be Uncle Vincent. But he was here. He was choosing them. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to build something beautiful on. Okay, she said, so quietly he almost didn't hear her. Okay, let's try. Let's figure it out together. Let's be a family. Vincent's face transformed, hope lighting up his features like sunrise. Really? Really? But I have conditions. Name them. First, you're taking back this resignation letter. I'm not letting you throw away your life's work for us. Keisha. No. You can step back, delegate more, find balance. But you're not walking away from who you are. The twins need to be proud of their uncle, not guilty about what he sacrificed. Vincent considered this, then nodded slowly. Okay, but I'm restructuring everything. Less travel, more family time. I want to be present for the important moments. Second condition, we take this slow. No rushing into anything. We learn each other properly, build trust, figure out how to blend our worlds without losing ourselves. Agreed. Third, you teach me about your world too. I want to understand the business, meet the people who matter to you. I want to be a partner, not just someone you take care of. Vincent smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him all day. I'd like that. You'd be amazing at business. You have all the skills, negotiation, problem solving, seeing through people's bull. And fourth, Keisha paused, gathering her courage. We do this right. No more pulling away when things get complicated. No more letting other people dictate our choices. If we're going to be a family, we're all in. All in, Vincent agreed. Through the messy parts and the complicated parts and the parts where we don't know what we're doing. Especially those parts. They moved toward each other simultaneously, meeting in the middle of the parking lot for a hug that felt like coming home. Vincent held her carefully, as if she might disappear, while Keisha allowed herself to lean into his strength. I'm still scared, she murmured against his chest. Good, he said, his voice rough with emotion. That means it matters. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other under the flickering streetlight, two people who'd found family in the most unexpected place. The wind continued to blow, but it no longer felt cold. The twins are probably wondering where I am, Keisha said eventually. Let's go see them. I want to tell them their uncle is officially unemployed. Keisha laughed, pulling back to look at him. You're not unemployed. You're restructuring for work-life balance. Right. I'm pioneering the revolutionary concept of leaving the office before midnight. It's going to be an adjustment. The best ones always are. As they walked back toward the apartment building, Keisha felt the last of her walls crumble. She'd spent so long protecting herself and her children that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be chosen, to be wanted, to be part of something bigger than survival. Vincent. Yeah. Welcome to the family. He squeezed her hand. Thank you for letting me in. Thank you for not giving up on us. Never, he said firmly. I'm not giving up on us ever again. They climbed the stairs to her apartment, ready to face whatever came next together. The December morning was crisp and clear, with fresh snow covering the ground like a pristine blanket. Keisha adjusted Malik's bright red winter coat, while Vincent secured Zora in her carrier. Both twins bundled against the cold, but alert and curious about their surroundings. 5 weeks had passed since that night in the parking lot, and the changes had been remarkable. Vincent had indeed restructured his role at Alexander Holdings, promoting Harrison Webb to CEO while maintaining his position as chairman of the board. The transition had been smoother than expected, with Vincent discovering that stepping back from day-to-day operations actually improved the company's performance. Keisha had enrolled in Wayne State University's education program for the spring semester. Her tuition covered by a scholarship Vincent had quietly arranged through the university's board. She'd also started working part-time at the Alexander Foundation, helping to develop programs for single mothers, a role that utilized her lived experience and natural empathy. But today wasn't about their new life. Today was about honoring the past. Are you ready? Vincent asked, his breath visible in the cold air. Keisha nodded, clutching a bouquet of white roses and baby's breath. I've been ready for this my whole life. They walked slowly through the cemetery, following the winding path to the Alexander family plot. Vincent had had the headstones cleaned and repaired, and fresh flowers were planted around the graves despite the season. A small miracle of greenhouse cultivation that he'd arranged as a surprise. 3 headstones stood side by side. Charles Alexander, 1945 to 2001. Margaret Alexander, 1948 to 2001. And between them, a newer stone that read Aaliyah Alexander Thompson, 1978 to 2023. Beloved daughter, sister, and mother. Oh, Keisha breathed, seeing her mother's headstone for the first time. Vincent, it's beautiful. The stone was carved from the same grey granite as his parents', with delicate roses etched around the edges and a small emerald embedded in the center. A mirror of the necklace Keisha still wore every day. She belongs here, Vincent said simply. With family. They stood in silence for a moment, the only sounds the soft cooing of the twins and the distant traffic from Jefferson Avenue. Finally, Keisha stepped forward and placed the roses at the base of her mother's stone. Hi, Mama, she said softly. I brought some people to meet you. Vincent moved to stand beside her, his own flowers in hand. Yellow roses, Aaliyah's favorite. Hey, sister. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you. She's not mad, Keisha said, touching the emerald necklace. She knew you'd come when the time was right. When we needed each other most, Vincent agreed. He knelt down, placing his roses next to Keisha's. I brought your grandchildren. They're perfect, just like you always said they would be. Malik chose that moment to let out a happy squeal, his mittened hands reaching for the snowflakes drifting down from the grey sky. Zora, not to be outdone, began babbling in the baby language she'd been developing, her voice carrying clearly in the still air. They're trying to say hello, Keisha laughed, wiping away tears. They know they're with family. Vincent stood and moved to his parents' graves, his expression growing solemn. Mom, Dad, I want you to meet Keisha. She's Aaliyah's daughter, and she's everything you would have wanted for our family. She's strong and kind and patient enough to deal with your difficult son. I'm not that patient, Keisha said, nudging him with her elbow. Patient enough, Vincent smiled. And these are Malik and Zora, your great-grandchildren. They're going to know about you, about all of you. They're going to know they come from a family that loves fiercely and protects each other. Keisha stepped forward, her voice steady despite her tears. Mr. and Mrs. Alexander, I wish I could have met you. My mother used to tell me stories about how you welcomed her into your family, how you made her feel like she belonged. I hope I can be worthy of that legacy. You already are, Vincent said quietly. You've given me back my family. You've given me back myself. They stood together in the peaceful cemetery, for generations of Alexanders connected by love and loss and the kind of hope that transcends time. The twins were quiet now, seemingly understanding the solemnity of the moment. I have something for you, Vincent said, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box, navy blue with gold trim. Vincent, you don't need to. It's not what you think, he said quickly. Well, it is, but it's not. Just open it. Keisha carefully opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring with a small emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds. It was beautiful, but it was clearly not an engagement ring. It's a family ring, Vincent explained. I had it made to match your necklace. It's a promise, not a romantic one, but a family one. A promise that you'll always have a place in this family, that you'll always be chosen, that you'll never be alone again. Keisha's eyes filled with fresh tears. Vincent, I know we're taking things slow, and I respect that. But I want you to know that whatever happens between us romantically, you and the twins are my family forever. Nothing will ever change that. Put it on me, Keisha said, extending her right hand. I want to wear it. Vincent slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Welcome to the family, officially. I love you, Keisha said, the words coming out without thought or hesitation. Not just as family, but I love you, Vincent. All of you. Vincent's face went through a series of emotions: surprise, joy, relief, and something deeper that looked like peace. I love you too. I've loved you since the moment I saw you in that jewelry store, even when I didn't understand what it meant. Is this the part where you kiss? Came a voice from behind them. They turned to see Mrs. Rodriguez approaching, carrying a thermos and wearing a bright purple coat. She'd insisted on coming to pay her respects, and Vincent had arranged for a car to bring her. Mrs. Rodriguez, Keisha laughed. You're supposed to be waiting in the car. I got cold, and I wanted to meet your family properly, the elderly woman said, moving to stand beside Aaliyah's grave. Hello, Mija, she said to the headstone. I'm Rosa. I've been watching over your babies. They're beautiful, just like you. Thank you, Vincent said, his voice thick with emotion. For everything you've done for them. Family takes care of family, Rosa said simply. That's what we do. The word hung in the air, family. Not just the biological connections, but the chosen ones, the people who showed up and stayed and loved unconditionally. Should we head back? Keisha asked, noticing the twins were getting restless. It's getting cold. In a minute, Vincent said. He turned back to the graves one more time. I promise I'll take care of them. All of them. And I promise I'll bring them back to visit. They'll know where they come from. They'll know they're loved, Keisha added. By all of us. As they prepared to leave, Keisha felt a sense of completion she'd never experienced before. She'd spent her whole life feeling like she was missing pieces of herself, like she was incomplete. Now, standing in this cemetery with Vincent and the twins, and even Mrs. Rodriguez, she felt whole. One more thing, Vincent said, pulling out his phone. I want to take a picture. For the twins, when they're older. So they can see this moment. They gathered around Aaliyah's grave. Vincent holding Malik, Keisha holding Zora, Mrs. Rodriguez standing beside them like the surrogate grandmother she'd become. The snow continued to fall gently, creating a backdrop that looked almost magical. Say family, Vincent said, setting the phone's timer. Family, they said in unison, and the camera captured them. Imperfect, complicated, and completely beautiful. 1 year later, the penthouse had been transformed from a sterile bachelor pad into a warm family home. Toys were scattered across the living room floor. Finger paintings covered the previously pristine walls, and the sounds of children's laughter echoed through rooms that had been silent for decades. Vincent sat on the floor in his pajamas, helping 18-month-old Malik build a tower of blocks while Zora, now walking confidently, toddled around in her bright pink Christmas dress. The twins were healthy, happy, and growing like weeds. "Uncle Vincent, look," Malik said, pointing proudly at his slightly lopsided tower. "That's amazing, buddy," Vincent said, his heart swelling with pride. "You're going to be an architect, just like great-grandpa Charles." Keisha emerged from the kitchen, wearing a flowing green dress that matched her necklace and carrying a tray of Christmas cookies. She'd graduated from Wayne State with honors and was now teaching at a local elementary school while continuing her work with the Alexander Foundation. "Breakfast is ready," she announced, then stopped to admire Malik's creation. "Wow, that's a beautiful tower." "I made it for Mama," Malik said, his vocabulary expanding daily. "It's perfect, baby," Keisha said, kissing the top of his head. Vincent stood and moved to the window, looking out at the Detroit skyline. The city was beautiful in the morning light, covered in fresh snow and full of possibility. Alexander Holdings continued to thrive under Harrison's leadership, and Vincent had found that being chairman allowed him to focus on the big picture while still being present for the moments that mattered. "What are you thinking about?" Keisha asked, joining him at the window. "Just this. Us. How different everything is from where we started. Different good or different bad?" Vincent turned to look at her, this incredible woman who'd changed his entire world in the span of a conversation. "Different perfect. Even the chaos?" Keisha gestured toward the living room, where Zara was now trying to climb onto the Christmas tree. "Especially the chaos," Vincent laughed, moving to rescue the tree. "I spent 40 years living in perfect silence. This is so much better." "Mama, Uncle Vincent, look," Zara called out, having successfully grabbed a low-hanging ornament. "I see, baby girl," Keisha said, gently removing the ornament from her daughter's grasp. "But let's leave the decorations on the tree, okay?" "Okay, Mama," Zara agreed, immediately distracted by a pile of unwrapped presents. "Speaking of presents," Vincent said, reaching into his pocket. "I have something for you." "Vincent, you already gave me too much." "The car, the new apartment fund, It's not money," he interrupted, pulling out a small envelope. Well, just open it." Keisha carefully opened the envelope, revealing a folded piece of paper. As she unfolded it, she gasped. "Adoption papers? For me to officially adopt the twins," Vincent explained nervously. "I know their father isn't in the picture, and I know I'm already their uncle, but I want to make it legal. I want to be their father in every way that matters." Keisha's eyes filled with tears. "You want to adopt my babies?" "I want to adopt our babies," Vincent corrected gently. "If you'll let me. If you think they'd want that. They already call you Uncle Vincent, but they light up when you walk into a room like you're the most important person in their world." "They are the most important people in mine," Vincent said. "All three of you." "Yes," Keisha whispered. "Yes, of course, yes." Vincent swept her into his arms, spinning her around the living room, while the twins clapped and giggled. When he set her down, they were both crying happy tears. "I love you," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "I love our family. I love the life we've built together." "I love you too," she said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. "All of it. The chaos and the complications and the beautiful, messy reality of it all. Mama, Uncle Vincent. Kiss," Zara announced, clapping her hands. "She's very observant," Vincent laughed. "She gets that from her mother," Keisha said, pulling away to look at him. "Are you ready for this? Really ready? Because once you sign those papers, you're stuck with us forever." "Forever sounds perfect," Vincent said. "I can't think of anywhere else I'd rather be stuck." As they gathered the twins for Christmas breakfast, Vincent caught sight of the framed photo on the mantel, the one taken at the cemetery almost exactly a year ago. For people who'd found each other against all odds, who'd chosen love over fear, who'd created family out of loss and hope. Aaliyah's emerald necklace caught the Christmas tree lights, sparkling like a promise kept. She'd known, somehow, that her plan would work. She'd known that love would find a way. "Thank you," Vincent whispered to the photo, to his sister, to the universe that had brought them all together. "Thank you for bringing me home." "Uncle Vincent, come eat," Malik called from the kitchen table. "Coming, buddy," Vincent called back, then turned to Keisha. "Ready for our first Christmas as an official family?" "More than ready," she said, taking his hand. "Let's go make some memories." As they walked toward the kitchen, surrounded by the sounds of their children's laughter and the warmth of unconditional love, Vincent realized that he'd finally found what he'd been searching for his entire life, without even knowing it. He'd found home. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.